Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon and welcome to MindShifters Radio. My name is Dr. Michael Ryce, and my wife Jeannie will be with us momentarily in our MindShifters online radio in our ongoing conversation about the Aramaic language and its teachings on forgiveness particularly. And for those who perhaps aren't familiar with my work, you could go to our website, which is www.why, again, again.com, whyagain.com, and you can download the book for free. The worksheet that we'll talk about today, if that topic comes up, is free and available along with instructions under the download button that says download worksheets. And Jeannie is the webmaster on our website, and she just does an absolutely awesome job of that. And there are, you can download the book in a half a dozen languages. You can do My Commitment. You can look at all the worksheets. There are so many things on the website that she's done that are just awesome. And you're welcome to peruse the website if you want to be on our mailing list and keep posted about what we're doing. We're actually broadcasting today from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We are on the road. We're going to be in South Florida doing several events over the next few weeks. We'll probably be leaving here around the middle of March and heading up to St. Augustine, Florida. And we'd be delighted to see you in person if you happen to come to visit. And otherwise, it's a delight to be with you today. And let me just check and see if Jeannie's online yet. Are you with us, Jeannie? I guess not. We're still working out the technical bugs of doing Blog Talk Radio online, especially with being on the road, and it's an interesting process. We're learning lots and achieving lots, so it's a delight to be with you. And today I'd like to talk about the idea that our world is made up of energy, and when we view life through the eyes of things, of bodies, of material substance, we view life incorrectly. One of my favorite statements that Albert Einstein says is, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Now, of course, everybody says, well, that's ridiculous. We look around and we see matter everywhere we look. But do we really see matter, or do we see the appearance of matter? I would offer that our brain makes up the thing called matter. There's an awesome video, if you want to Google it, on the Internet with a woman named Jill Bolte Taylor. And Jill is a neuroscientist, and she got up one morning to go and exercise, and as she was doing her exercise, she realized, because of the fact that the world she saw was disappearing and many other things, that she was having a left brain stroke. And as she describes it, being a neuroscientist, she knew exactly what was happening. And interestingly enough, as her left brain totally, completely flooded with blood from the stroke and her left brain stopped functioning, she's able to describe exactly how what she saw was breaking down. And one of the things she talks about in this video is that she's looking at her hand, and this is one of the things that had her realizing she was having a stroke. She was looking at her hand, and her hand was starting to disappear. She couldn't tell the difference between the edge of her hand and the air around her hand. The mind generates a world of things. There's something else going on out there. If you look in the ancient Aramaic teachings, you'll remember that we were warned to not judge by appearances. If you judge by appearances, appearances remain. There's a young lady named Pamela. I'm hoping maybe Pamela is on the show today or going to call in perhaps, but listening. And one of her favorite statements is that I will not be moved by appearances, and therefore appearances will move. There's a scientific basis for that. Now, there's a scientific basis for the fact that if you judge by appearances, if you look at appearances and you are moved by appearances, then appearances will move you and you'll create more of the same. Fortunately, now that we have the physics understanding to underpin it, we can go back to the understanding they had 2,000 years ago where the understanding of the physics of the world was very well perfected and then lost. We've been through some very, very dark ages in the last 2,000 years ago, and so much was lost, and we think we're so modern and so smart, and the truth is we don't have a clue compared to what they knew 2,000 years ago in the Aramaic. And when they were saying, don't judge by appearances, they were saying, in essence, your left brain creates a whole world that isn't there. And the world that isn't there is created by the firing of what your mind contains. And especially if you deny something that your mind contains, then you dissociate from what your mind contains, and that's the first thing that's going to show up in your life. And your brain, the picture maker, will make up this picture that, of course, the problem is about somebody else. And if we judge by that appearance and we think that the world of bodies exists outside of us, that in believing that, we will tend to keep creating the same thing over and over and over again. And, of course, that's the essence of, or the title of my book, and I feel so blessed the universe reserved that title for me. Why is this happening to me again? And if you engage your creative self in an appearance in your mind, because you are creative, you will continue to create that result. Once you disengage from the world of appearances, once you recognize that everything your mind shows you in pictures is simply an external picture or a seemingly external picture of an inward condition, then you have the option of letting go of appearances and removing the energies and the frequencies that keep producing the results in this energetic, frequency-oriented world. And so as you recognize the power that you have, it is far, far more than anybody has ever imagined. It's the ability to create your life and to create what you see. And, you know, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines, which some of you have heard me use, is, notice if you've been through a particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the only one that was there every time. It's about you. It's inside of you. And notice that you can change people, you can change environments, you can change your geography, but that doesn't change your biology. And once you realize that, your biology is impacted and made up of the frequencies you engage in. You know, it's kind of like, imagine that we had a newspaper company, and every story that they wrote, the quality of the story impacted the quality of the hard drive on their computer. So every vicious, vile, violent, nasty story they wrote would create a vicious, vile, violent energy in the computer, and the hard drive over a period of time would be destroyed by that. Of course, that isn't what happens, but it is what happens in the human. Every vicious, vile frequency and energy we engage in becomes part literally of our hard drive, which is our biology. And once we sow it in our biology, you remember there's a great man a couple thousand years ago that said, as you sow, you reap. Once you sow it in your biology, then your biology is going to feed it back to you as a picture. Only if you're in denial about it. If you're saying, this isn't mine, this isn't me, your biology will show you that it's somebody out there. And you'll actually hallucinate a whole world. Now, many people say, oh, that's ridiculous, Michael, but stop and think about it for a minute. How many of you have ever been accused of saying something you absolutely never said and doing something you absolutely never did? I'll tell you that every time I ask that question, most people in the audience laugh and put their hand up. And then I ask, keep your hand up till I get to your number. How many times has it happened to you? Once, twice, three, four. Virtually everybody agrees it's infinite. Why? Because if we live in a world of people who live in denial all of their lives, they live in dissociation, and we happen to come along and fire the brain cells in them that they're dissociated from, they'll make a picture of us, and they will literally see our lips move and hear the words come out of our mouths. That didn't happen. They'll see us do the behaviors. That never occurred. Well, how is that possible? It never occurred. Yes, it did. If you happen to be the person who fired those brain cells in someone, their mind makes up, their biology out of its content makes up a whole world, and they literally see a body. Remember, bodies don't exist in the world. They only exist in the mind. They literally see a world where your mouth moves and they hear the words, not that your mouth said, but that were contained in their brain cell structure. All listening comes from the listening brain. It doesn't come from the speaking brain. We think we all speak the same language. I love what Winston Churchill said. He said we have the privilege of being separated by a common language. And once you recognize that, you begin to become responsible for what's in your biology. You begin to become responsible for what's happening in your mind, in your emotions, and in your world. And instead of being sourced by appearances in your mind and pretending it's outside of you, you start to recognize, gee, I'm the one that's feeling this. I'm the one that's in pain. Guess what? If you are in pain, your mind is off base. Your mind, your thoughts are in error. Once you recognize that, and how do you tell if your mind is off base or in error? It says, ouch. Some part of your structure, physically or emotionally, says, ouch, that hurts. When there's hurt, it's because there's a frequency, there's literally an energy that does not belong in your biology, in your physiology. In the ancient Aramaic language, the word that represented having an energy in your biology or physiology that didn't belong there was sin. It's actually an archery term in Aramaic, and when you fired at the target and you missed the bullseye, the scorekeeper yelled sin. You're off the mark, like, as in take another shot. And once you recognize that, then you have the option of starting to change the content of your own mind. And you have the option of starting to change the content of what you create your world out of. And that's an awesome, awesome ability to have. Jeannie, are you with us yet? I assume that Jeannie's having a problem with her internet connection. Being on the road, sometimes we need to go somewhere to find an internet connection. Today we're sitting in front of Whole Foods, and Jeannie's gone in to get an internet connection to be able to run the switchboard, and unfortunately, I guess she doesn't have one. I'm actually sitting out in the car. So if you're at Whole Foods Market, come by and say hello. I'm right by the front door, sitting in the car as we do this radio show. I love this technology world. It's absolutely amazing. It's awesome. But on with our discussion about energy, and when you start to see your life through the eyes of energy, everything changes. Everything shifts. Everything is different. Because energy that you store within you makes up. Energy is digital. Energy is information. And you've got a converter box. Remember a few years ago they said everybody who doesn't have a digital television has to get a digital converter box? Well, you've got one in your brain. And it takes all the digital energy stored in your cells and in your genetics, because our genetics are nothing but digital information. It takes all the energy that's stored there, and it turns it into an analog image. If you're not familiar with that term in electronics, an analog image is a picture. Your brain, your mind, is a picture maker. And it makes pictures out of content. We think we're looking out through our body's eyes at the world. You cannot see anything outside of you with your body's eyes. You can only see what is going on outside of you, whatever that resonates in you, that stirs up something in your biology. And if it stirs up something that you're in denial of, then that stirring up process leaves you locked into a cycle of creating the same results over and over and over again. And what we're looking to do is, and of course our MindShifters radio, the whole idea is to be able to shift our mind, to shift the mind out of the biology we inherited. Your life tends to look like your generations, whatever you do. In fact, you go back into the ancient Aramaic where they said, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. We're just playing out the same stuff. And, there's an interesting exercise that's offered to people who are in therapy by family therapists, people who do family therapy, and they're assigned the task of finding anybody and everybody that ever knew anything about their bloodline. And as they tap into those people who knew something about their bloodline, they ask questions about, great-grandpa and granddad and mom and et cetera, and they assemble all this information in writing, and all of a sudden there comes a point where they go, oh my God, I thought I was living my own original life with my own original choices, and all I'm doing is playing out what's been going on in my bloodline for 1,000 generations. We were shown a lot of appearances as children, and those appearances tended to emotionally impact us. And if we've emotionally impacted our physiology with something that doesn't belong there, an energy that's off the mark, our biology keeps yelling, ouch, 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 ouch. Now, most of us, because we live in denial and dissociation, pretend that when we've got something saying ouch in us, somebody else caused it. It's all their fault. Look what they've done to us. As you recognize, it's not their fault. And it's not your fault either. It's just your responsibility. This is your energy field. This is your genetic structure. This is your life. It's nobody else's. And what it shows up is all about you. It's all about what's contained in your biology. And when you begin to change what's contained in your biology, everything shifts and everything changes. Your emotions, your diseases, your realities, what your mind outputs, and the actual world in which you live. Because this is an energetic world impacted at every turn by you and the content of your mind. And so our opportunity in this MindShifters radio game, and if you want to learn more about the material that we're talking about, you can go to my website. Of course, you can download or you can order DVDs, CDs, but you can also, there's several videos on the site, several audios you can listen to. You can download the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, free in Spanish, English, German, Russian, Swedish. The Swedish publisher wouldn't let us put it on the website free. We've got a beginning point on Thai, Arabic. Let's see, there's another one, I think. But anyway, and we've got 3 or 4 others on the way, so we'll be on the lookout for those. We're committed, absolutely committed to taking what we've discovered from the ancient Aramaic about forgiveness to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. We'll go anywhere on the planet we're invited. And when we do, we pay our own expenses, and the workshops are offered free. The material's on the website free. You can also, of course, everybody has bills to pay, so you can donate to support us. You can go to the website if you find this benefits you and click the donation button and support us with a donation. But beyond that, you can take the tools and put them to work in your life. Now, forgiveness in the ancient Aramaic has nothing to do with anybody else but you. In fact, the directive, if you remember it, that said, love your neighbor, had nothing to do with your behavior or your feelings toward your neighbor. The word in Aramaic that was used in that directive was rakma. And what that word represents is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that keeps you connected to a sane and loving mind whenever you're in any kind of situation that you need a sane and loving mind. You notice that little example I gave a few minutes ago of somebody accusing you of something that you hadn't done, of saying and doing something you hadn't said or done. And that person who accused you, remember the state they were in? I guarantee they were not in a loving state. They did not have Rakmaset. And so with not having Rakmaset, they were not able to see truly what was going on. And you became the object of their attention. They did not have love of you as their neighbor. And in Aramaic, the word neighbor means anybody that you think about. They did not have love of neighbor and therefore projected what didn't belong on you into their brain's image of you and thought you were the problem in their lives. Notice whenever that happens, there's always hostility or fear going on. And forgiveness is about going inside yourself and deleting the hostility, the fear, the pain, and being restored to a human life, being restored to the active presence of love. That's where we want to go with MindShifters Radio, and that's what we're here to support you with every day, 5 days a week, every mind, heart, and being on the planet. We'd love your support and inviting people to join us on a daily basis. And let's check and see if Jeannie's gotten technical problems figured out yet. And are we operational? Are you there, Jeannie? Well, it sounds like not. Well, that's strange. I guess more problems than anticipated with the internet connection. So I apologize that we can't interact with you with questions right now. Normally, we can take your questions and calls and be specific about what the information is that you're looking for. But until Jeannie gets things squared up online, unfortunately, that part isn't going to happen. So I'll just continue with the ideas that we are offering to share with you. We had an awesome day yesterday. I want to say thank you to intherooms.com. And intherooms.com is a networking site, or pardon me, a social networking site, kind of like Facebook, only it's for the recovery community. I think that everybody on the planet should join it because we're all in recovery from something. But we had an awesome day yesterday, and thanks to the folks at intherooms.com. Check out that website. Even if you're not in recovery, check out the website. There's some really sweet stuff. They do a daily meditation that is awesome. It's Alan Cohen's meditations, and his quotes and his meditations are awesome. You might want to check out Alan Cohen's work on the internet. He's doing some fabulous stuff. And the folks at In the Rooms are just creating an awesome support community of people in 12-step programs, and their reach is becoming global as they touch out and or reach out and touch people with the recovery message. That we're not alone, that we can tap into a higher power and begin to change the appearances in our world. And as we do it by changing the content of our own minds, our own biology, our own emotions. So thank you to Kenny and RT at In the Rooms. We had an awesome day yesterday in Pompano, and I'd like to thank BRT. BRT is a recovery center, and economically priced. If you know somebody that needs treatment, the folks at BRT have as I understand it, one of the most economical programs for recovery on the planet. And so you might want to check out BRT if that's something that would serve you to move in your life to a new place. If you've got a challenge with alcohol or drugs in any way, shape, or form. And, of course, one of the prime indicators that one has a problem with alcohol or drugs is the denial. This isn't my fault. There's always a story about somebody else. It's always somebody else's fault. And once we recognize that, then we have an opportunity to start to change things. And so today, of course, is Valentine's Day, an awesome day, St. Valentine. Of course, it's become a big commercial thing. There's money in the game. And, I love Jerry Maguire's key line in the movie Jerry Maguire, show me the money. And, if you look at what drives most everything in our culture, it's all about money. And it doesn't matter whether it serves humans or not. People are brought up rather naively to believe that, every modality that's out there is there to support me. And sadly, a lot of it's not. And it's time for us to wake up as human beings. And this idea of Valentine's, I love to quote the song that was written. I don't even remember the band. Anybody, Terry, if you know what that band is that wrote Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. If you think that, a dozen roses is going to steal her heart and make her love yours, unfortunately, you're sadly mistaken. The truth is, nobody has ever loved you and nobody's ever going to love you. You have never loved anyone and you're never going to love anyone. Why would I say such a thing? That's ridiculous, Michael, because love is not a verb. It's not something we do to each other. Nobody can do it to you. Nobody can give it to you. Your essential nature is that of love. Jeannie, when she opens the workshop, the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, always asks the question, How many have ever held a newborn child? Everywhere on the planet, everybody agrees the newborn is love. That's our essential nature. That is human life. And in this commercially oriented culture, we've had that removed, and we've made it about things. And you know, you can win somebody with things, but you can't capture the experience of love from someone else. You can with the right kind of support and relationships, and this is the essence of our Healing Through Relationships message that we carry as we travel around the globe. And you go to our website and look at My Commitment. Over on the left-hand side, down toward the bottom, click on My Commitment and take a look at that. And that commitment is a tool that we teach in our Healing Through Relationships workshop for how to actually bring ourselves back through our relationships to our original nature, which is love. And as you bring yourself back to your original nature, which is love, you get to have a direct experience of love. You know, people say, well, I'm not going to love you because whatever, you might hurt me, there's something wrong with you, whatever. And what happens is the one who gets ripped off for the experience of love is the person who says such a thing. And you get to experience your being as you get to experience a human life, not when somebody else approves of you. And by and large, our culture has given us the message that, you know, our love is dependent on whether somebody approves of us or not. And that's not love, that's approval. By the way, Jeannie, are you with us yet? Well, I don't know. It looks like maybe Jeannie isn't going to be able to catch up with us. I don't know what's happening, so we'll carry forward. But I'll tell you what, I have an idea. If anybody would like to text me a question or a thought to share, I don't know, where things are at because Jeannie and I are in two different places right now. But if anybody would like to text me with a question based on what it is that we're talking about or what it is that's going on in your world, I would invite you to text me at 417-273-4838. So if you can send me a text to 417-273-4838 until Jeannie is able to get the web connection taken care of, I will be delighted to address your question and your thought that you send on your text. 417-273-4838. We'll make a little adaptation here and use a little different technology. I don't know exactly what's happening with the internet connection, but obviously there's a problem for Jeannie being able to get on with us. Jeannie, we miss your sweet voice, and we'll hold the space that you'll get here before the end of the show. But if you want to text me a question or a thought, that would be awesome. So what is Valentine's Day really about? Well, if we strive as human beings to live a human life, what will happen is we will come into a direct experience of the active presence of love. If you remember, this man named Yeshua 2,000 years ago said, be as a child. He was saying, get into your essential nature. And as you get into your essential nature, then you just are the experience of love. And as you recognize you are the experience of love, then you have a chance to extend or surround or support others in that love, and that changes everything. I just got a text from Jeannie, and she says she's trying to get on the internet, but just can't seem to do it. There's something wrong with either her computer or the wireless Wi-Fi here at Whole Foods Market. So once again, text me a question. I would love to hear your questions and your thoughts, and we'll bounce off of those in our MindShifters radio program today. So this experience, when we look to our partner to fulfill a hole we have in us because we're not experiencing human life, because we're not experiencing love, then by that, trying to force somebody else to fill a hole we have in us because we're not having the experience of love is something that tends to create in us all kinds of frustration, or at least elicit from us all kinds of frustration and upset, because why won't you just love me? Why won't you be the resolution to what's going on in in my life? What's going on for me? And as you recognize that, then as you wake up, you create relationships that are not about me loving you or you loving me. It's about me being love in your presence and you loving me in my presence. And I just got a text from somebody. I don't know who it is. They didn't sign it, but it says, will Christopher contact me today on Valentine's Day by phone call or visit? So, Christopher, somebody's sending you a message if you're on our MindShifters radio, and they'd love to hear from you. They don't sign it, so I don't know who it is. But, Christopher, if you're there, I assume that they know who it is. You know who it is that's wanting your connection and wanting to hear from you.
Michael.
Oh, Jeannie, well, welcome, sweetie.
Thanks. We actually have two callers, so I'm going to go straight to the
Awesome.
first caller, and it is 417-255. You're on the air. 417. You're on the air.
Welcome. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Terry.
Oh, Terry.
Oh.
Hey, this is Terry Bowling from Heartland. Hey, good to hear your voice, sir.
Is this the forgiveness doctor?
This is the forgiveness doctor. Yes, sir.
All right.
That's what that's what we decided to learn, and so we decided to teach it. And for 40 years, that's been my focus. And, I think I'm actually getting to the point where I'm starting to really understand it, Terry.
All right. That's awesome. Hey, and Johnny Lee sang that song, written by Patty Ryan and Bob Morrison, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. You were looking for that love.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's
Johnny
secondary.
Lee.
I was called. There was a couple things that came up I wanted to get some input on. Now, the analog description, I find that fascinating, analog and the digital.
Right.
And I heard you describe it as the analog was the picture on the television. But one of the things that's been a challenge for my mind is understanding what was the difference between an analog and the digital phone service. Like, the cell phones went from analog to digital. Do you know anything about that?
Right. Well, I'm not, it's been a long time since I've been involved in the electronics field, and so it's a different system of transmitting information. Basically in practical terms, the difference between analog and digital you can do by looking at a digital watch, and you'll notice that there are just some numbers and a colon on the watch, and that gives you information about what time it is. An analog watch gives you a picture of what time it is. So you get a face with numbers and hands and all that sort of thing. So there's a difference between digital and analog. And the signals that used to be for television used to be transmitted in analog format. A couple of years ago they said get a digital converter box so that you can take, because the signals, the law, the quote-unquote law, the rules of men said, all television stations will transmit in digital, and now all televisions that are sold in America are digital, all new televisions. But exactly the difference in the frequencies, I would presume from my background in electronics that it's got to do with the way they modulate the signal. But I really don't know. That's not something I've looked into. And back when I was in the electronics field, there were no cell phones around. But when I say modulate the signal, what that means is, if you remember and this ties right into this whole thing that we're talking about, because it's all energy. And the more we understand about energy, the more we're going to have insight into and understand how we create our physiology and what happens in our physiology and what happens in our world. But in the FM radio, FM stands for frequency modulation. In other words, for every change, when you have a note, say for instance on a piano that comes across on your FM radio, there has to be a change in frequencies. So the way that that FM signal modulates or changes, the music is carried on something that changes frequencies. So that's FM, and then there's AM, which is amplitude modulation. And what that does is it's a signal that carries the same information, but it transmits that information by increasing the amplitude of it. So it's carrying the information differently. And that's the closest I could get to some input regarding the analog and digital.
Well, that was helpful. It helped me to see it, understand a little bit deeper, and I'll look more into that myself, take it on my own to study that a little bit deeper.
Got some noise in the background somewhere. If somebody could mute their phone, that would be nice. Jeannie, have you got your phone on? Could you hit the button on the right so that the noise in the background stills? Yeah, better. So any other thoughts, Terry?
Yeah, that's good. That opened up some ideas around amplitude and frequency differences there and the different levels, and then that's something I'll certainly take the time to do a little bit more personal study on. And another thing that came up for me today was I was looking over an editorial in one of the papers, and the focus was on bashing someone that didn't. I'm not going to elaborate on specifics, but it was just from a fear-based perspective of bashing some folks that didn't believe the way this person and his group believes. And that triggered at first it triggered some anger in me, and I was like, I want to write an editorial back and really lay this guy open. And it's like, well, where's that coming from?
You mean it gave you an opportunity to learn forgiveness, Terry? How awesome. Exactly. Isn't that amazing how life gives us all those opportunities?
Yeah.
I figured you'd already been finished with that, Terry.
Evidently not. I think there's there's quite a few 70 times 77s floating around in there, and we'll keep working on them one at a time and many at a time when we do the breath work. So
there you go.
As I processed through the anger, well, then I rolled right into fear. Then it was like, well, if I put that out, and put my name on it, which I wouldn't want to put it out if I didn't put my name on it, then I was afraid of fear came up around the repercussions from the group that this big group that represents. So there was two big opportunities around that, and that moved into, and I'm still in the middle of this process of doing my worksheets around the fear that came up as the next question becomes, I want to put my truth out there, of course, and I want them to know that I'm right. So that's, let me cancel the need to be right, and somehow show them the error of their ways. And then at the same time, I feel like if I don't say something, or I'm thinking if I don't say something, then I'm not going to be, I'm not being true to myself, but I'm based out of fear. And it's like, I've got a lot of stuff going around just with that one little item that trying to figure it out. And there's another clue, trying to figure it out as what's appropriate. We're getting to that appropriate space of accountability and holding these folks accountable for their thoughts. That's not really my job, and it's like, but then is it my job to express what's going on with me? And there's so much of that fear-based and hostile type retributional thing going on in the world. That if I choose to engage in it, what am I opening myself up to? You get the kind of gist of this whole thing I'm putting out there?
I do, yes, sir. Yeah, and it's awesome how life gives us the opportunity. And one of the best questions that I think we can ask ourselves when we're in the kind of, dilemma that you're in right now, Terry, and it's actually a question I ask a lot, and when people don't understand the question, it's the question I am most hated for. When people do understand the question, it's the question I'm most loved for, and that's, how does this look like your life? How does it look like your life to be in a dilemma over something like this? And as you look at that, of course, one of the things we point out in our codependence to interdependence workshop is that what we call the non-being mind, where human life isn't present, that the active presence of love is not, then what that mind tries to do is figure it out. And you can't figure it out all you can do is go inside yourself and delete the frequencies of confusion and unclarity. And when you do that, all of a sudden clarity comes. And you delete it, of course, through the act of forgiveness. And if you think that forgiveness means, and of course I'm talking about a wider audience, if you think that forgiveness means I let somebody else off the hook because I'm in my muddle, you're sadly mistaken. This world has conned us. This whole Greek philosophy that's been put into the ancient Aramaic scriptures as truth is just not truth. It's got nothing to do with letting somebody else off the hook. Now, there is a benefit to letting others off the hook. If you have pain and turmoil and trauma in you, you can let another off the hook, pardon them, and it will, if you really sincerely pardon, you will unhook from your mind that some measure of that turmoil and trauma around that person, so it will tend to improve things. But it doesn't delete the turmoil and trauma. In the Aramaic language, you'd never be invited to forgive another. You'd never be directed to forgive another. You'd never be directed to forgive yourself. You'd be handed a tool with which you go inside yourself and remove the turmoil and trauma. And there's the solution. You know, every time somebody's in some kind of pain or upset, it's always about, well, let me see if I can go change something out there, as opposed to, well, let me start by changing what's going on in here so that I have the clarity and I'm empowered to step out into the world and give what it is that I'm capable of giving. And that is the active presence of love, the most fabulous gift you could give for Valentine's Day would be to
Michael, we have
put
two
yourself...
more callers.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, then I'll just leave our discussion at that. Terry, any other thought before we go on to another caller? We'll see if we can get the others in.
That was great. I took several notes and I shifted some understandings for myself around the part and all. Thank you.
Awesome. Love you, Terry. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, 765, you're on the air. 765.
Oh.
You want to mute your phone, Jeannie? Hello, 765. Who are we talking to?
Well, guess who?
Is this St. Jane?
That's it.
Is this St. Jane?
It is. I've been listening, and I was thinking about Terry
Awesome.
and how would he rather be right or happy?
There you go.
You know, that's kind of simple, but all right, I have a question for you, and it's a kind of a counseling question. I have an individual who you know, but it's a mate who lives, maybe 3 hours away, and we've been together off and on for 23 years, and I've done hundreds of worksheets on this individual, which means it's all about me. But it's about communication, and on cell phones, this individual has trouble. There's always something wrong with the phone, as long as I can remember. Not my phone, but his phone. So interpret that as meaning that I want to communicate, and he does not, which always makes me angry. So I want to
Something
solve
outside
that.
of you makes you angry?
Pardon me?
Something outside of you makes you angry? So something outside of you implants this frequency of anger in you, and your physiology produces anger because they put it there?
Well, that's what I want to solve, is what is it in me? I want to communicate. So if I said that this individual does not, it's confusing to me. In other words, what to do about that, because it always happens, or a lot.
Well, a couple thoughts.
Okay.
A couple thoughts that might be helpful. One, the fact that his cell phone doesn't work, or he doesn't communicate, or he doesn't want to communicate,
right,
doesn't cause you anger in the least. You have anger, and your brain hooks anger up to that experience.
That's right.
And so the number one opportunity and the number one thing that will tend to keep that pattern of non-communication going will be your anger about non-communication. Because while you have anger in your file on communication about people not communicating, and, I'd ask you the question, how does that look like your life? While you have anger about that, you're sending out a very intense, literal, measurable, high-energy wave that says, you better not communicate with me because I'm really angry. And it will tend to stifle, if there's just this little inclination to communicate, literally that energetic frequency The only thing we know that can stop the high energy wave that leaves the mind when we think a thought is another set of brain cells in tune with it. And obviously he's in tune with it. So I suggest that you might start doing your 77 times 70 worksheets on anger.
All right.
And letting loose of that. And then to go beyond that, have you ever had the conversation with him, and does he say, I don't want to communicate with you?
No. I've had conversations, but it's not. He doesn't say that.
Okay. So then here would be my second offering that I think might be helpful. And, of course, we're talking about a principle, and this is for all of us to get, is that notice that when he says my cell phone isn't working, you make a presumption. And the presumption is the reality in your brain cell structure, the frequency your mind serves up is he doesn't want to communicate. Now, I'd offer that what that really means is that if you kept saying my cell phone isn't working, and I presume you're feeling like he makes that up, if you were to do that, that would mean that you didn't want to communicate. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't want to communicate.
Okay.
However, when you take something that is what it would mean if I were doing it, and then I try to insist that somebody else, it must mean the same for them, then I want to put my reality, what's going on between my ears as a result of a frequency firing in my structure, you don't want to communicate with me. I want to insist that he accept that that's true about him. And you know what? That might not be true about him. That's a total presumption.
Yeah.
And so you might want to get into a really clear, loving space with him and just ask, when your cell phone isn't working, is it really about the fact that you don't want to communicate, and is it really your cell phone? And just see where that goes. And you might find that your presumption was all projection. It was all an inside job, and it will open a whole other space.
I've done some of this work before, and it does go back to my mother and I didn't communicate. Still there. After all these 70 times 70 worksheets, it's still there.
Oh, well, that's the next layer.
Yeah.
And who was Mom angry at?
Oh, I don't know. Lots of things, I'm sure, because she couldn't communicate with other people.
Yeah.
There's that genetic going right through. However, I don't seem to have a problem communicating with everybody else. So apparently I've just picked him to be the one that I'm going to work on this stuff.
Well, and perhaps not so much him, but perhaps you might just want to start in a general way looking in your file on mates. Have you ever dated or been with someone else and found communication to be difficult with them?
Not really. I think I just chose this person to work with the stuff out with my mother. I mean, he's a Virgo, my mother was Virgo. I pretty well know that the issues I had with her that he represents, it's not about him, but it's about me getting tired of always reacting to the same thing. I'm getting worn out with it.
So he resonates, Mom, for you perfectly. Well, what an awesome gift that you get to look at mom issues, and that's one of the major issues. But what I might suggest is doing some worksheets around communication with Mom and see what fruit that produces.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
Yeah,
it's kind of obvious, isn't it? Okay.
Well, when we block something, we block it. It's just not visible. So. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the help, and that's where my thoughts were when I was listening to you, and I appreciate it.
Awesome.
And I'll let the other person.
All right. Well,
talk to you later.
I'm sure that is about all of us. We love you, and it's a delight to say hi. Blessings.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Michael, we have two more callers on the line. I think this one is Dr. Tim Hayes. Tim, you're on the line.
Oh, awesome.
Good afternoon. And
hey there, Dr. Tim.
A shout-out to St. Jane there and Perry. I was just calling in because as you're talking about forgiveness and why forgive, I recently went through this book, The Gentle Art of Blessing, and it gives...
I just ordered it today, by the way.
Oh, great. It gives a story of Dr. George Ritchie, who was with the American troops in World War II when they went in to liberate Holocaust victims. And they ran into a gentleman. He was a lawyer with an unpronounceable name, so they called him Wild Bill Cody. He was described as bright, shiny eyes, or straight posture, boundless energy, and Dr. Ritchie assumed that he had just been there for a short time before the liberation.
come to find out, he'd been there 6.5 years. And when he sat down with him, Wild Bill told him this story, that at the beginning of the war, Wild Bill had been living in a Warsaw ghetto with his wife and 5 children. The Germans came in and lined his wife and children up against the wall and shot him. And despite the fact that Wild Bill pleaded to be shot with his family, they wouldn't, because he spoke German and he was a valuable asset. And so Wild Bill was quoted as saying, I had decided right then, he said, whether to let
Are you breathing, Tim?
Yes. Whether to let myself hate the soldiers who had done this, he said it was an easy decision. I was a lawyer, and in my practice, I'd seen what hate can do to people. So at that moment, I decided to spend every day of my life, whether it was months or years, loving every person I came in contact with. And the result was he went through the concentration camp 6.5 years with almost inedible food and all those disease-ridden conditions, and he was the picture of health.
Wow, that's a pretty awesome testimony. I want to cry as you talk about it. How insane our world is, and yet how powerful the active presence of love is. It's just, it's the active presence of a human life. And by the way, for those who don't know Dr. Tim, if you're new to the show, Dr. Tim calls in every once in a while. He's a support group leader in Chicago, or just outside of Chicago, Crystal Lake, and runs an awesome support group there if you are in that area and you need support. When do you guys meet, Tim?
Tuesday nights from 6:30 to 9, every Tuesday in Crystal Lake. And
the Unity Church?
It's sponsored by the Unity Church, and you have the contact info on your website, on your page. So
yeah,
we'd be happy to have anybody stop in and join us.
Awesome. Well, what a powerful testimony of the power of a human life to maintain something in physiology in those conditions. That's really awesome. And you did recommend that book to me about 2 weeks ago, and I ordered it, and the folks I ordered from contacted me a few days later. I said, we don't have that in stock, and cancel the order. And then I just found it again today about 2 hours ago and ordered it. So I'm looking forward to receiving it and reading it. It's The Gentle Art of Blessing, and the author's name is?
Pierre Pradervand, Pradervand. And it's basically another form of staying in the energy of forgiveness. And the best reason to do that is because I get flooded with the energy of love. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course when we decide to hate or fear or condemn or criticize or any other the other various forms of puking upon others that humans have created, we think we're doing it to somebody else, and we're just putting poisons into our own system, taking a poison, hoping somebody else will die. And the whole game is so twisted backward. And I think we come full circle now in the show, because we started out talking about energy and that we are energetic beings. When we judge by appearances, when we say, oh well, look at that terrible thing happening out there, we've pretended the terrible thing isn't happening in us, that it's actually out there, and that we're powerless over it. There's a woman or a gentleman that was at a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and he became connected and communicating with Jeannie, and he was sharing that he was going through or just about at the point of divorce with his wife, and he was at the Healing Through Relationships workshop. He took the commitment that we offer as a tool in that workshop home with him and contacted Jeannie a couple of weeks later and said, it's like we're on our honeymoon. It's like we've got a whole new relationship, and it's just awesome. And he said, I read it to her every day. And Jeannie said, well, does she read it back to you? And he just kind of stopped and held his breath and said, what do you mean? Well, does she read it back to you and read it to her? Oh, she doesn't know I'm reading it to her. I go in the bathroom and read it to her. But their relationship was transforming. Why? Because he was. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all an inside job. And so that story just, whoa, that's powerful. We'll have to actually see if we can get permission to put that on the website, because that's just such an illustration of the principle that we're talking about.
Yeah, we had a testimonial like that years ago in our support group, and I asked the gentleman, so how often do you read it to each other? And he said, oh, I didn't tell her about this.
Yeah.
So it can be a unilateral thing. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I think we got one more caller, Tim. Thanks for your call. Please call in regularly. We'd love to hear from you.
Will do.
We love you and honor your part in our work.
Thanks. Take care, Michael.
Okay, bye-bye. So, Jeannie, you've got another
Michael,
caller?
the other caller hung up, so and I don't have any questions out of the chat room, so just take it on. You got about 5 minutes.
Awesome. Well, I'll just offer the fact that the commitment from the Healing Through Relationships workshop is such an awesome tool if you choose to put it to work in your life, and as you put it to work in your life, it's just amazing the shifts and the changes that take place within your own physiology, within literally the frequencies that you carry within you, the way your mind makes up. Everything it makes up, the pictures it makes, start to come from different frequencies as you choose to live that commitment. And in so choosing those different frequencies, your whole physiology has to shift. It has to change. You can't engage. You can't sow a frequency without reaping either the benefit of it or the destructive aspects of it. Again, like the computer, if every terrible story that was written in the newspaper's hard drive created destruction in the hard drive each time you did it, those hard drives wouldn't last very long. But as you recognize that you have the ability to put into your hard drive, into your physiology, the active presence of love, 24/7, 365, whatever's going on in your world, you realize that you've just got an awesome power at your disposal and an awesome internal support system that is there to bring you to that new place. And that new place is that of the total, complete, active presence of love of a human life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that the real purpose of this celebration of Valentine's Day is really about each of us reclaiming a human life. And as we reclaim a human life and really, truly live out of that human life, we have the opportunity to impact all of humanity. That each one of us is this absolutely awesome presence of love with the ability to impact every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you my commitment from the Healing Through Relationships workshop. You can go to our website, why, again, W-H-Y, and then the word again, AGAIN.com. On the left-hand side, you'll see a link. The commitment's there in about a dozen or so languages. If you happen to speak or know somebody that speaks a language that's not on the website, we would appreciate your help in getting it translated. But the commitment goes like this, and I'm just going to ask you to just kind of get still inside yourself and quiet and imagine having the ability to live your life out of this 24/7, 365, no matter what the appearances are. I promise to trust you enough to tell you the truth and be true to you. I commit to always be sweetness in your life, to nurture you daily, and treat you lovingly, gently, and with respect in my thoughts, my words, and my actions, whether in your presence or not. In every interaction, I commit to affection for you, to look for and acknowledge the highest and best in you, and to surrender to love, our true nature. My connection to my source, my relationship with you, and our serenity will always be more important than any issue. I open my heart to embrace you in my love. I open my heart to be embraced in your love. If anything unlike love comes up, I will hold this in my heart and listen as I learn to speak, experience, and be responsible for my own realities. I'm here for and with you. I promise to keep communication open and keep love conscious, active, and present as we heal, celebrate life, and grow together. Jeannie, I make that declaration and that commitment to you and to all of humanity. And if anything less than love comes up, I ask for support, able to move through it and maintain a human life in my physiology. Perhaps we're the first generation in 1,000 who've had that opportunity. Have a blessed day and the best year yet of your eternal life.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you for calling.